I have two connections. My father, who was born and reared in London. My father-in-law was Frank Henderson. My name is Mac Ionnraic, which is the Irish version of Henderson. This amuses me because anybody who came from London would have had a Cockney accent. But Daddy managed to get the nickname Blimey.
Okay.
So there were even beside his grave on the date of his burial, somebody came to me and asked me, I suppose your father did have a proper name. I only knew him as Blimey. Would you ever tell me what his real name was? Well, he was John O'Connor.
Okay.
Blimey. He was a very genial kind of a person, very happy, very musical. And why should I, a second generation Cockney, take part in an Irish insurrection? My father, who was born and reared in London as the grandchild of famine immigrants from Cork, Kerry and Galway, reared in the east end of London, which in those days was a colony of Irish people and one of Jews. They lived quite an Irish type of life. My father learnt a lot of the Irish songs from his parents, who were tailors, and when they would be sitting doing their work.
Coach, could you tell me about the Zeppelins again, if that was all right?
Zeppelins, yes. Well, my father, the house in which they lived in Underwood Road, it was straight onto the footpath. And on one occasion, my father and his mother were outside chatting, and the Zeppelins came flying over, you see, and started dropping here, there and ever. And Daddy's sister came to the door, caught them by their clothes and pulled them both back in. And my father became angry that somebody had tried to kill his mother. So he started giving out, and he was about to join. He was all worked up, and he was going to go and join the army.
It's the British Army. The
British Army, yes, because when he wasn't going to have all this. So when he got ratty about it, his sister tipped him on the shoulder and she said, "Hold it, young fella. Your own country is going to need you soon." So that changed his mind. So in 1913, when the volunteers were set up here, it was also set up in London, Liverpool, the cities and one in Scotland. They were already preparing over there, knowing how things were going and being worried about the Home Rule not coming about. They drilled. They used, on a Sunday afternoon, they would come together and drill, and he also learnt a little bit of Irish in the Gaelic League. I'm not sure how much he had when he came over. The London Company was about 500 strong until John Redmond offered the volunteers to the British government, as a result of which most of our members joined the British Army, believing that they would be fighting for the defence of small nations, Ireland included. But about 50 remained loyal to the Republican oath. At the latter end of 1915, the 4 English-based companies received orders from GHQ in Dublin that we were to cross to Ireland and report to that headquarters. They came over, they were drilling over there and preparing. And in January 1916, Count Plunkett accepted them and invited them to come into his property in Kimmage. So they were billeted there, that's where they prepared, and then they marched down. We were told off in sections and then marched towards O'Connell Street via Lower Abbey Street. Included in the party were some of the headquarters officers, and there were 2 or 3 cars containing explosives, etc. Section 1 went on to the Henry Street door. Section 2 took the main entrance. At that time, the main entrance to the GPO was in the centre of the building. And the third section, together with the cars, went to the Princess Street gate. I was in number 2 section, and I remember well that as we came abreast of the main entrance, the order rang out, "Halt, left turn, charge." Oh, my throat was suddenly dry, and immediately I got inside. Tom Clarke handed me a Tommy can. My first reaction was that this was a can of tea, and the organisation must have been great to anticipate how thirsty we would get on going into action. It's really dirty. But I soon came back to earth when I realised that the Tommy can was in fact a homemade bomb. We were immediately posted at the windows and ordered to break all glass. I was at the window at the north of the main door, and as I climbed the long counter, which then ran under the window, shortly afterwards I was transferred to the second window in Henry Street, and was not long there when a party of lancers approached from the direction of Parnell Square. Orders were given to hold our fire until a whistle was blown, but as the party reached Nelson Pillar, somebody fired a shot prematurely, and then we all let fly. Some of the lancers were wounded, and at least 2 of the horses were killed. I later found out that one of the men was well known to me, as I often met him at Irish functions in London. At about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was told to report to Commandant Joseph Plunkett, who was OC Communications. He informed me that as from that minute, I was attached to his staff with the rank of lieutenant. He then instructed me to report to the Brigade Engineer, Captain Breen, at the Marconi School of Wireless at Reese Buildings at the corner of O'Connell Street and Abbey Street. This Marconi School contained a complete 1.5 kW ships transmitting and receiving apparatus for use in training operators. Daddy was an electrician, and they wanted to send out a message to the world that it had taken place, that the rising had begun. As we came under heavy sniper fire during the erection of the aerials, we had to await darkness to complete the work. By Tuesday morning all was ready, and it was decided to commence transmission with the coming again of darkness. In those days, ships' transmitters had a wider range during darkness than during daylight. Attempts to operate the receiving apparatus failed, and so there was no way of knowing if the message was being received. But there have been some unconfirmed stories that in fact it was, one involving a sailor somewhere near Japan. It is also possible that the news of the rising reached the world as a result of a code telegram sent from the GPO to Valencia Post Office, and then transmitted from the neighbouring cable station to New York. Connell Street was by now under severe enemy fire. Our party, which included James Robinson and Tom Ennis, made its way down Lower Abbey Street, through Marlborough Street to the Parnell Monument. At this point, we decided to rush across O'Connell Street in a body. This we did and took the enemy located near North Frederick Street completely by surprise, and we were halfway across before fire was opened on us. But fortunately, none of us was hit. We went through Moore Street, Henry Street, Liffey Street, Middle Abbey Street, and through the passageway to Princess Street Gate. Thursday evening, I was at one of the windows on the ground floor, where I remained until Friday afternoon. The Imperial Hotel, now Cleary's, was blazing fiercely, and so intense was the heat that we could almost feel it at our post. At about 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, Commandant the O'Rahilly sent Michael McGrath and myself to the telegraph room on the top floor with a large double-handled fire extinguisher, saying that there had been a fire in this room and we were to help in putting it out. When we reached the top floor, we found that the enemy was shelling the building with incendiaries and that the roof was on fire in several places. We managed to get a hose up to the men on the roof, but the water pressure was very weak and it was impossible to put the fires out. Work in the telegraph room was difficult, owing to the fact that the windows were very low and we were in danger from enemy fire. We therefore had to stoop low when moving about. We were joined in the firefighting by Mick Collins, who was a staff officer. We held the fire at bay, floor by floor, by placing barriers of sand across the doorways and flooding the floors with a lake of water. Meanwhile, a number of our men were moving explosives to a comparatively safe place in the cellars. But I remember Joe Good telling me how nervous he felt when passing the lift shaft, as burning timbers and sparks were falling down the shaft continuously. Later on, the building became untenable and we got orders to evacuate. The plan was to endeavour to reach Williams and Wood's factory and then join up with the North King Street men. We left by the Henry Street door into the laneway opposite, intending to work up Henry Place and Moore Lane, but the enemy had barricades in the lane and at the lower end of Moore Street. A call went out for volunteers to attack this barricade, and most of us volunteered, but only men with rifles were allowed to go, and as I, like most of the Kimmage lads, had a shotgun, I was refused. The party under Commandant the O'Rahilly moved along Moore Street in single file and close to the walls. When nearing the barricade, fire was opened by the enemy and the O'Rahilly was killed, and some of the party wounded, including Liam Daly. The remainder of the GPO garrison got up Henry Place and broke through the gables of the Moore Street houses, boring holes in the dividing walls until we got as far as the next laneway, at the corner of which lay the riddled body of the O'Rahilly. We took up positions at all of the windows, and I have never forgotten the long, awe-inspiring night that followed. The city was in darkness, and the only light was that of the burning GPO, reflected on the windows across Moore Street. At about 3 a.m. the fire reached the explosives in the cellar, and the resulting blast was terrific. Daylight came at last, and with it, a realisation of the fact that we were completely surrounded. After a time, the rumour went around about the possibility of surrender, but almost to a man we felt that it would be best to go out and attack the barricades, even if most of us died in the attempt. I was one of the party addressed by Mac Dermott. He explained the exact position to us and overcame whatever objections some of us had to surrendering. He said that we had fought a gallant fight and our morale had been very high. Also, that in his opinion, the leaders would be executed, but that most of us would probably be sent to prison. Well, of course, he was in the Civil War as well. He was down around the Cork area, I think. Okay. We didn't hear many details of that. I think people found it hard to talk about that because it was so sad. It must have taken a lot of courage to be prepared to give your life if necessary. Okay. And why would a person do or how would they do it? And I thought, well, they deserved to be remembered. No other country, think of the Alamo, think of so many countries who are proud of their historical monuments, and I can't believe that it could be neglected so much, and it's very important. It could be a beautiful tourist attraction to have a footprint memorial in this area, because there's more to 1916 than just the GPO.